Yo, so today we're going to be seeing if Omnisphere is worth it. So we're going to do this by using my super scientific chart that I made, and it has 5 categories, and each of the categories will be given a point score out of 10 and then multiplied by 2 for a score out of 100. So just before we start, I plan on doing more of these for the plugins that I have and use, and then it'll make more sense. You can like compare the chart to see like which one I think is most worth it. But yeah, so the 5 categories are functionality, so stuff like the interface, how you get to the sounds, just like basic stuff like that. And then sound selection, which is broken down into 3 subcategories: variety, quality, and then aftermarket, which would be like how many sound banks and stuff like that are available after you actually purchase the VST. And then sound design, how easy is it to make your own sounds and stuff. Features, some plugins have extra features that are only in that plugin, so that'll be a category. And then probably the most important one, which would be price, which is very important because you're gonna have to pay that anyways. All right, so to start off with, we have the functionality category, which I gave Omnisphere an 8 out of 10. And really the only reason that it lost points is because it's a little bit hard to import like sound banks and stuff. But I assume once you get used to it, isn't that bad. But I would assume for a beginner like me, I haven't really gotten any extra banks or anything, so it's a little bit confusing to figure out. But otherwise, the functionality is great. The interface looks nice, works. But I think the one thing that sets Omnisphere apart is the browser for the sounds. So if we look here, it splits it up into category, and then when you're within that category, it gives you a type, a mood, and a genre, which is really helpful when you're trying to like pinpoint what kind of sound you want with words. And then the other thing that I think is really good is the sound match feature. So I'm just gonna go ahead, click on a random sound, and then we go up here and click sound match, and then it'll bring up this section with various other sounds with like a bar rating that sounds similar to it. So if you kind of like something in one sound, you can click around and see if you like another one a little bit more. And I think that's really helpful, especially for like, so yeah, those are the reasons I gave it an 8 out of 10 in functionality. Next we have sound selection, which like I said earlier is broken up into 3 subcategories. So first we have variety, which I gave it another 8 out of 10 for, and really it pretty much has everything. But if you're in a stock Omnisphere, you're not going to see any pianos, trumpets, orchestral instruments. But once you get the things that like companion with Omnisphere, it like gives you those things. So that'd be like Keyscape and Trillion, which expand Omnisphere pretty much. So overall, it has a really good variety. It's just missing some things that I wish it had stock. And there's 14,000 sounds I'm pretty sure it comes with, so you're gonna find something that you like pretty much. Next is the sound quality, which I put at a 7 out of 10, just because some of the sounds in here, like you don't click on them and you immediately are like, oh, I want to use that. Sometimes it takes some tweaking to it, so I'd say the quality is around a 7. But once you get to know like the sound design stuff and you can go in and tweak sounds on your own, it really makes it easy to just pick a sound and go with it. But if you're not familiar with it, then it's a little bit tougher. Last subcategory, the aftermarket, what kind of banks are there after you actually get the plugin. I put that at a 10 because really there's limitless amounts of banks. Like you could go on Reddit, look for banks. You could go like pretty much all of the internet money members have like their own banks on Wave Supply and stuff. There's just tons of options, along with other things that Spectrasonics put out, like Keyscape and Trillion, that you get that plugin and it all kind of merges together in Omnisphere and gives you more sounds. So an example of that is you have Omnisphere, you buy Keyscape, then you get the Keyscape Creative library, which uses some of the elements that you have in Keyscape and combines them with elements in Omnisphere, which is really cool. Next category is sound design, which is kind of weird. I gave it a 6 out of 10, which seems pretty low, but that's only for one reason, and it kind of is like just my opinion, but it's not very visual. Like when you go in here, I just have like a random preset, like you see a lot of sliders and dials and things like that, but it's not very visual. So I feel like it would be harder for like a beginner to pick up like just making a sound real quick, when like if you try to make a sound in Serum, it's all very visual. You can see the envelope, you can see what the filter looks like, what the each of the oscillator looks like, and stuff like that. I just think it's a little bit easier to pick sound design up in other programs. But otherwise, once you get to know the sound design, you can make a lot of crazy stuff. I mean, as you can see by the aftermarket banks, people obviously have learned and can make really great sounds with it. Next is features, which I gave a 10 out of 10 because the two features that I feel like are really prominent are the ARP and then the orb function, and also that it has the capability of having 4 oscillators, unlike something like Serum where you can only have 2, or Vital where you have 3 and then a noise oscillator. But just to go into this, the ARP one is by far like one of the best ARP arpeggiators in a VST. There's a ton of great presets, very easy to customize, very visual, so it's very easy to like see what the sound is doing, which I really like. But this is one of the best arpeggiators, and it's one of the reasons why I got a 10 out of 10. And then the other one that comes to mind is the orb, which I haven't seen in any other VSTs, but I'm pretty sure, I haven't really used this a lot, but I'm pretty sure it's like panning and a little bit of distortion. Like you can record what you want the orb to do and like drag it around. So it's pretty cool, and I think once I actually learn how to use it, it'll really spice up my sounds. So the last category is price, which is probably the most important one in figuring out if it's worth it or not. And I had to give it a 5 out of 10 because it is really pricey. Not as much as like Contact with like a bunch of banks, but Omnisphere comes in at $500, and that's just a lot to spend. Just like, it's just a lot. Like, I don't know how else to explain it. 500 is a good sum of money. You could get a lot of other things with $500, and that's why it gets a 5 out of 10. All right, so now you know all the 5 categories and what points I gave them for Omnisphere. So I multiplied that by 2, and the total comes out to 74.6, which is a C in terms of school grading. In my rating system, don't really know what that equates to yet. That might be really high, but there's no other references to go off of. So as the series expands, it'll be easier to see like what numbers mean what. And there's also some alternatives to Omnisphere that are cheaper or free. The ones that come to mind are Analog Labs for those like super fat synthy sounds, and that's $200, which is half the price. And then also Arturia Pigments, I've heard, is very much like Omnisphere, but again, it's $200. So you could get Analog Labs and Pigments for less the price than Omnisphere. So that might be a better deal, who knows. But then also Expand has a very similar selection of sounds, but there's just not as many as them, and it's way harder to sound design in Expand. I haven't even tried yet, but I assume just from looking at the interface that it is rather difficult. But there'll be a video on Expand soon. And then also for like the guitar presets, you could go with Ample Guitar, which is free, and Ample Bass is a bass guitar, which there isn't any in Omnisphere. So you could pick those both up for free. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope you found this video useful, and now you can make a more informed decision on whether Omnisphere is worth it. But here is final super scientific chart. And then I should have mentioned this in the sound selection part of the video, but there's some really good presets in there. Some of my favorites are Granular Vibra Signs, which I think was used in Lean On Me, classic nylon guitar, double tracked 6-string guitar. Ambient Space Piano is pretty good. A lot of the Ethnic World Bank is really good, along with the Retro World, I think it's called, Retro Land. So there's a lot of good stuff in Omnisphere, but overall, right now, I'd say that don't get Omnisphere. I'd say go with something like Analog Labs or Pigments and stuff. It's just really expensive. The only way I would say, yeah, for sure get Omnisphere is if you either already have Keyscape or Trillion, or you're in the position where you can buy Omnisphere, Keyscape, and Trillion all together. just so you really get the full package. But hopefully you enjoyed the video. Let me know if you want me to make any changes to the super scientific chart. But yeah, I'll play some random beat right now. Have a splendid rest of your day.